European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's 2025 State of the Union address framed this era as Europe's independence moment, a call for the bloc to assert its strategic autonomy and take responsibility for its own security and economic destiny. Yet, just weeks prior, her commission finalized a trade framework with the United States that has led many to question the very premise of this independence. A humiliating agreement, the deal, struck in late July 2025 to avert a full-blown trade war threatened by U.S. President Donald Trump, has been met with widespread dismay across Europe. Under its terms, most EU goods entering the U.S. are now subject to a 15% baseline tariff, more than triple the previous average. In stark contrast, the EU agreed to remove tariffs on all U.S. industrial goods and provide preferential market access for a range of American agricultural and seafood products. The concessions did not end there. The EU also committed to ensuring European firms invest an additional $600 billion in the U.S. economy, purchasing $750 billion worth of U.S. energy, including liquefied natural gas (LNG), dramatically increasing spending on U.S. defense exports. Public perception has been scathing. A poll conducted across the EU's 5 largest member states found that an average of 52% of citizens described the deal as a humiliation. An overwhelming 77% believed the agreement would benefit the U.S. economy above all, with only 2% thinking it would primarily benefit Europe. The same poll revealed that 60% of respondents would view President von der Leyen's resignation favorably over her handling of the negotiations. An unstable stability. The Commission's defense of the deal hinges on the argument that it provides crucial stability in our relations with the U.S. at a time of grave global insecurity. Officials maintain it was the best possible deal available and the only responsible way forward to avoid Trump's threatened 30% tariffs. However, this proclaimed stability appears illusory. The deal is already showing signs of fragility. President Trump has since threatened substantial additional tariffs in response to the EU's digital regulations, such as the Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act, which impact American big tech companies. Furthermore, the U.S. has yet to fulfill its part of the bargain by lowering its tariffs on European cars from 27.5% to the agreed-upon 15%. The EU's chief trade negotiator, Mauro Ifovi, was forced to defend the bloc's right to legislate, but admitted that disagreements over digital oversight were kept out of the initial talks and could resurface in the future. This suggests that rather than securing stability, the EU may have simply postponed the next confrontation, having already made most of its concessions. The EU's struggle for autonomy is further complicated by its position between an unpredictable United States and an increasingly assertive China. The bloc is attempting a difficult balancing act, aligning with Washington on key security issues while trying to carve out its own economic path, a strategy fraught with contradictions. On the China conundrum, the official EU strategy towards China is one of de-risking, not decoupling. This has involved measures like imposing tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles to protect EU industry. However, the data reveals a starkly different reality. Between 2018 and 2023, Europe's dependency on China for manufactured goods, semiconductors, batteries, and critical raw materials actually deepened, leaving it more vulnerable to supply chain disruptions than the U.S. Against this backdrop of dependency, von der Leyen's State of the Union address included a thinly veiled threat to impose sanctions on third countries that help Russia circumvent Western sanctions, a clear reference to China and others. This aggressive posture is a high-risk gamble. As some analysts and business leaders have warned, Beijing could easily retaliate by further restricting exports of critical materials like rare earths, for which it has already implemented export licensing requirements. Such a move could cripple key European industries, from automotive to green technology, demonstrating that the EU's De-risking may be more rhetoric than reality. The global trading system, once governed by the World Trade Organization (WTO), is fracturing. In its place, power-based bilateral deals are becoming the norm. In response, President von der Leyen has proposed building a coalition of like-minded countries, similar to the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnerships (PTP), to reform the global system and secure rules-based trade. However, the EU's credibility in leading such a coalition is undermined by its own actions. The lopsided deal with the US is seen by many potential partners as evidence that the EU itself is willing to bow to power politics when pressured. This creates a fundamental contradiction. The EU can hardly champion a rules-based order while its partners see it giving a bully the better deal. Indeed, trading partners like India are already demanding the same concessions on carbon tariff CBAM that the EU appears to have granted the US, threatening to unravel the EU's attempts to set global standards. In response to the deteriorating security environment, particularly Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine, the EU has embarked on an unprecedented effort to bolster its defense capabilities. Preparedness is key, the Commission states, arguing that Europe must take greater responsibility for its own security. The ReArm Europe plan, the centerpiece of this new strategy, is the White Paper for European Defense Readiness 2030. This roadmap aims to create a genuine European defense union by boosting the continent's defense industrial base and ensuring the rapid deployment of forces. The financial scale of this ambition is immense. ReArm Europe plan aims to mobilize €800 billion to finance a massive ramp-up of defense spending by member states. Safe Security Action for Europe is a €150 billion loan instrument to help countries jointly invest in key capabilities like missile defense, drones, and cybersecurity. Stability and Growth Pact activation of the National Escape Clause to allow member states to increase defense spending beyond normal fiscal limits, creating up to €650 billion in fiscal space. This strategy is complemented by new initiatives announced in the 2025 SO2, including an Eastern Flank Watch for enhanced surveillance and a qualitative military edge program to support Ukraine's armed forces. The goal is clear: to transition the EU from a soft power entity into a credible hard power actor capable of defending its own territory. While the EU project's ambition on the world stage, its foundations are being tested by a challenging domestic economic outlook and persistent internal divisions. The European Central Bank has downgraded its GDP growth projection for 2025 to just 0.9%, citing weak exports and investment challenges linked directly to trade policy uncertainty. Global merchandise trade growth is projected to be a meager 0.9% in 2025, with Europe's contribution turning slightly negative. Financial markets have experienced pronounced volatility, and investors are on alert for potential sharp corrections. This economic fragility limits the EU's capacity for bold geopolitical action and makes it more vulnerable to external shocks. The unity deficit, perhaps the greatest obstacle to the EU's strategic ambitions, is its own lack of unity. On crucial issues like industrial policy, defense spending, and how to engage with the US and China, member states remain divided. France and Spain, for instance, favored a tougher line against US tariff threats, while Germany and Italy urged caution. This disunity is easily exploited by external powers and slows the bloc's decision-making, weakness von der Leyen acknowledged in her call to move beyond unanimity in foreign policy. Furthermore, the EU's single market, its greatest economic asset, remains deeply fragmented. Internal barriers to trade in goods and services are estimated by the IMF to be equivalent to tariffs of 44% and 110% respectively. This internal friction represents a massive self-inflicted drag on European competitiveness, far outweighing many of the external trade challenges it faces. Until the EU can overcome these internal divisions, and complete its single market. Its ability to project power abroad will remain fundamentally constrained. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.